First up at UFC Vegas 39, we have Steve Garcia versus Charlie Ontiveros. Steve Garcia 11-4 overall. He is 4-1 in his last 5, coming off of a loss. Charlie Ontiveros is 11-7 overall, 3-2 in his last 5, also coming off a loss. Both of these guys are coming off of losses in their UFC debut, so they're looking for their first UFC win. Charlie Ontiveros, again, coming off his UFC debut, but what's interesting, short notice against yes, Kevin Holland at 185 pounds. And yes, the screen is correct. This is at lightweight, 155 pounds. So he took it on short notice. He was fighting at 170, took it on short notice, bumped up to 85. Now coming down to 155, where he will be huge and thinks he will have an advantage. He was absolutely pummeled in that Kevin Holland fight, but you almost have to ignore it, honestly. It was short notice against Kevin Holland, who, despite his recent streak, is pretty good. So ignore that. Look at the rest of his career. Once you start digging into his career, you'll see he has somewhat of a hollow record against non-UFC caliber talent. He's a striker with a traditional martial arts background, which means he has that what the hell is his name? Wonder Boy stance. Nice wide stance, hands like this, legs super far apart. But he gets a bit wild. He throws unorthodox strikes while chasing finishes, and he's honestly pretty fun to watch. He does not have much to offer on the ground, but he will always make an interesting fight on his feet. One important thing to note is 100% of his losses, all 7 of his losses, were by knockout. Steve Garcia, solid grappler with good takedowns and decent boxing. He likes to come forward with big shots to set up his grappling. The odds are honestly wide on this. I think the odds maker said, oh, Charlie Ontiveros gets knocked out every single time he loses. He's probably going to lose. Let's call that a knockout. And they got these odds. These odds are honestly pretty wide. Steve does have a pretty clean path to victory here with the grappling. Should be pretty straightforward. So Steve should win, but if he engages in the striking, he could potentially have some issues. What do you think about this one, Jakey Poo?
Yeah, I agree with kind of like that last thing you said. If Steve starts getting a striking match for Charlie, this is going to be an interesting matchup. I agree that the odds are kind of wide on this because Charlie is so wild. He just always has that opportunity to catch someone in a weird way. I see Steve as if he does, like you said, if he goes to the grappling, he's going to win. Ontiveros was absolutely dominating the grappling department by Holland, which was surprising to see because Holland, as we've seen, is not a wrestler. So this is one of those fights. Actually, I'm going to look for like an inside the distance fight for either way. And I honestly, at plus 240, might throw some money on Charlie because he is wild enough, throwing wild knees on entries. He can do some, it's interesting to find some money at 240 for him. So probably inside the distance here, but Garcia should win for sure. But I'm interested in Charlie.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, Garcia should definitely win. And Charlie has proven that every single time he loses, he gets stopped, which is where these odds are coming from. There's probably a solid inside the distance bet that could be made here just based off of history. The biggest question mark for me will be Charlie's size. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, he fought at 185. This is 155. That's crazy. But he fought at 185 on short notice, and he was a 170 pounder. So it's not like he's a 185 pounder with a storied career and he's working his way down. That's not what it was, right? He jumped up for the short notice. So he's really a 170 pounder coming down. Steve Garcia is honestly kind of small for the weight class. So there might be a giant size discrepancy here. I am curious to see what happens at weigh-ins. So I have no bet on this. I want to see what happens at weigh-ins. I want to see, if Charlie made weight and he's just massive and looks good, he's got that crazy style, anything could potentially happen, and he might be hard to take down when you start factoring in the size. But what works against you is if you suck a lot of weight, your chin does not hold up really well. So I'll look at weigh-in. Steve's the pick. $9,100 in DraftKings. Honestly, it's probably not a miserable play. There's only 10 fights on this card, so there's not a lot of fighters to pick from. So that's probably not a terrible person to have in your lineup. And the Monkey Knife Fight strike line, it's either more or less. If you think Steve Garcia just blows through Charlie, then less. But I actually think more is probably the play here because I don't think he's going to engage in too much striking. He'll try to grapple. There'll be a bunch of strikes on top. Charlie's wild. He'll land some stuff. I think it goes a good amount. I don't know if it'll go to a decision, but I think we'll get 2+ rounds of action. I think more and more is the play. What do you think?
Yeah, I honestly think that it's going to be a quick stoppage, but I would still even play the more on Monkey Knife Fight. I think that's definitely the safer play, probably.
Well, if you want to grab a Monkey Knife Fight promo, wewantpicks.com/MKF. They will instantly match your deposit up to $100. I don't have a bet on this one. Like I said, I'll wait till weigh-ins. But the reason I'm up units last week is I didn't force anything. Jacob's up big last week with the Jamie Malarkey fight. Let's see if we can keep this train rolling.